So I'm going to make a video now showing how to redo the front seat. And this is my front seat for my parts car. First thing I'm going to do is take off all the trim that's around the sides. And it's all held on by Phillips screws. That's what I'm going to get to first. Also, this is a power seat, and the switch, it just sticks on there. You see the probe sticking out on here? Well, it just pulls straight out just like the power windows. All right, so I've taken the frames off the back, and all they got is a couple screws at the bottom here holding them on, and they clip over the top like that. So basically you take the screws out, pop that off. Now I see a couple screws right here that's probably holding this top part on. I've never taken these apart, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Is I'm learning as I go on this, but I figure it'd be good for somebody to at least see how they come apart. Alright, so they got a couple pieces of metal sandwiched around there, and that does not take it off. Well, I see now there's a nut here on the inside. Looks like a 1/2 inch. It's actually welded, so I'm gonna have to get to the outside to take it off. So I'm gonna have to take these few hog rings off to get to that. Pop it loose with a screwdriver. I really don't see anything else that would be holding it. That doesn't mean anything. Not budging, so something's got to be holding it. I'll just keep disassembling until I see what it is. All this stuff's gonna be finished. I gotta take it off. We got this attached to the top there. I guess to kind of hold it in place. I was kind of thinking this was going to be a very simple part of the seat to redo, but I'm starting to wonder now. It's got a lot of parts. Still having a hard time getting to what I need to get to. Bracket here on the side got to come off. Alright, so there's a rod that sticks out on the side of the hinge here that the hinge rides on the bottom, and it's got a spring washer on it. That's one of the ones that pops off. I think that's how you get the seat. Big pain. I'd like to get all this electric stuff working and put it on my car. It may be working, I haven't tested it. Worst case, if it's not, I'll use my non-electric stuff that come on my Calais. This stuff needs lubed up and cleaned up because it's rusty. Major pain in the butt. I'm trying to access the spring washer on this side. We've got this little metal bracket. I'm not even sure what that thing does. I don't know. I don't know if it has anything to do with the seatbelt or not. So this is what's holding it on, and it's nothing more than a spring washer. When you put it on, it's meant to stay on, so it kind of digs into the shaft. But sometimes you can get them off without breaking them, and sometimes you can't. I broke the one on the other side, so I'm gonna have to get something to replace it with. Alright, and I just went around the edges and pried it off. It did not break, so that was obviously a better way of doing it. Can't get a good clear shot of it, but that's all it is. So now I have to work it off like I did the other side. Got that off. Then this should pick up like that. Yep. That was smoother than the first time. Still difficult. Alright, so at least I've got the top and the bottom separated now. Now it's a matter of carefully taking them apart and painting the frames. So I'm going to start taking hog rings out. Old corroded pennies are falling out. Make it easier for myself. I'm going to write on the bottom of these. Right hand and left hand. And front and back. It'll be easy to mix these up, I think. I'm sure it probably wouldn't work, but it'll be enough to slow me down. Alright, so I've got this whole thing taken apart. So this is something I can do in the rain, is work inside, if I've got my frames prepared. Now I'm going to take hog rings off, probably get the cover off. Hopefully not find any severe rust like I found in the back seat of this car. So they've got it attached down in the base of this before they wrapped it around, which makes sense. Got something you gotta remember when you put it back though. Yeah, so it has a pocket sewn down through here to put a hanger in or listing wire in. This thing is in terrible condition. The sponge is just disintegrated, which is expected for the age of this. It would be nice if somebody made this molded foam for the front seat. I'm going to be using regular flat foam. And it'll look good, but I think it would look better if it had the molded buns like they came with from the factory. Just like they make for all the bucket seats for the common cars. This foam smells terrible. Again, which is expected. Ooh. This is pretty cool. Looks like a SO gasser seat. I don't know how long it's been since they were SO, but it's been longer than I remember. Cynthia McLaughlin. Anybody know Cynthia McLaughlin? And the date is 5/1/68. So this thing has really been in this car since the beginning almost. Smells so bad. So far what I see, the frame looks like it may be pretty good. You can see burlap don't hold up good over 50 years. So they put some of this, I don't know what you call it, batting in between the springs so that when the springs move, it doesn't make noise. You can do the same thing when you put it back together. They pretty much put it between all the layers of springs. Nobody wants to get in a car that squeak, especially when you buy a Cadillac. You didn't want it to squeak like a piece of junk, like a Ford or something. Yes, I like General Motors cars. And I will take the wire wheel and it'll clean that junk completely off. Some of this batting is kind of stuck to the good news is my seat's in good shape. So that's pretty much it for disassembling the bottom of the front seat. The backs will probably be a little different, we'll see. So this thing has a big washer and a screw in the back of it. It has a hole that lines up with the latch. So this has the steel wires that go on the edges on the bottom. And it's in good shape, so I'm going to keep it. So down the sides, it's not really attached to anything. It just has these stiff wires in there, I guess, to keep it from flexing. And they attach the wires on the side. Yeah, there's no connection points here on the sides. So the best we can try to do is replicate this sponge stuff with what we got. It's going to be a little different, but it should still be okay. But I know from the one that my brother had redone, you got to make sure you have some at the top, because if not, the back plate don't fit it real well. This sponge that they put on here was real complicated, and I'm sure it made the seats look the best. And that was one of the things, you're buying a Cadillac, you want nice seats. There's expectations, so they did probably the best they could to make the seats look good. Unfortunately, this stuff's not available anymore like this. I really wish it was. I wouldn't care what the price was, within reason I would buy it. I don't know, everybody else would too. Everybody wants them to look good. Guess they just don't have enough interest. Here's what you had from the factory. If it wasn't for the smell, it would be usable, but they had a different type of padding on here than I've seen on the other seats, probably to make it more comfortable. So they put burlap on the springs, put burlap around the top like they do on every seat I've seen. Alright, so here's the back of one of them, completely disassembled. Now it's just got to be cleaned up and painted. And be ready to start to put it back together. Okay, so I took the frames of the seats and cleaned them up as best as I could. I didn't sandblast them and all that. If you had a sandblaster and you wanted to do that, I don't see any harm in it. I just cleaned it up with the wire wheel, everything I could reach. And then I painted everything. This is going to be inside the seat anyway. You're not going to see very little of this. This is the passenger side backrest. You can tell that because of the bracket here. I originally thought those brackets were, there's 2 bolts in them, but apparently they're welded or something too, because they don't come loose at all. So you have to take them loose the way I did. But this is the frame, and that's what I'm going to start with right now. I also have the frame for the backrest, for the seat done too. The bottom part of the seat, and it looks a million times better. But one reason I do this too, I don't want it rusting on the new sponge and everything, and rust falling out from under the seat. I just think it's better. I think the factory should have painted everything, but I don't think they did based on the way everything looks that I've ever taken apart. If they did, they used some really cheap thin paint. But anyway, that's what we got. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is putting burlap on the seat. And I took a couple pictures. They have burlap in this area, and they had burlap on the top, just like all the other seats I've done. And that's the first thing I'm going to be doing. So what I've got here is the burlap that was on one of the seats, and I saved it just so I could basically replicate it. And it just wrapped around the end like this, and this burlap had wires in it. I'm not going to have wires in mine. I guess I could go through the trouble and try to put the wires in it, but I don't really see the purpose of it. So I'm going to copy what I got. This piece right here is almost a perfect piece for that. Already scrapped from something I did earlier. So I'll save that from that. Most of the burlap was disintegrated. I couldn't even identify it. You couldn't tell what it originally looked like. I guess it doesn't hold up well to weather and age. Probably weather being a big part of it. Either way, I don't imagine I'll be redoing these seats in my lifetime again. If I was to keep the car for my whole life. Another thing I'll say, they only had this burlap attached down on the ends. I'm probably going to do a little better than that. I guess it didn't matter. I think the only purpose of the burlap is just some extra protection to keep the springs from coming in contact with the foam. But I can tell you, on the seats I took apart, they still came in contact with the foam, even though there was padding and everything where it wore through. But it's years and years in the making. The places that it wore through, it did destroy the sponges, the foams. asking the question, or making the statement that I wish somebody made these foams buns for these cars for the seats, and I saw on Facebook on one of the groups that somebody was asking that same exact question. So I think everybody wishes they made them. You just go through and attach it down. Like I said, I think it's only attached on 2 sides originally. I'm attaching it on 4 sides. I don't see any harm in it. For one, I don't have all the little wires that they had in it. That's pretty much it for that part. Now I gotta put the piece at the top. So this is the factory edge of the burlap. I'm not gonna fold it over on that side. I'm just gonna attach it. It has a thicker edge that will not unravel as easily. Alright, so that's the way that is. I try not to put any tension on these. Just leave it the same space that it is when it's fully extended. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's the way I've done all of them. So far they came out good. I bought some fabric from Hobby Lobby, felt fabric, that I'm going to use to cover the next part. They do sell it at Hobby Lobby. I wish I'd have known. I probably would have used it on some of my other stuff. But I'm going to be making these inserts that go in here. Probably use some of my old fabric for that. It keeps the springs from making noise. It's just basically rectangles of felt that go between there, and you hog ring them in. So here's what the original pieces look like. And they're the width of the seat springs, and basically you pull them all the way down in there and then hog ring them in, and that keeps it from, when the seats push together, it doesn't squeak. So I'm going to cut me a few of these. Looks like this seat could use 3 of them. Or this piece can. So this is old leftover felt from my brother's car. And even the Chevrolet seats have this in them. So I think all seats came with it. Just slide it all the way back. I'm going to cover the whole thing with the felt. Alright, so that put a nice felt covering on it. So next I cut me a piece of foam, and I'm going to make sure it's even. It comes in this, I guess, 2 foot wide piece. I bought mine off of eBay, and I make sure that it goes all the way down on the top, because the top needs to have some extra cushion there for it to stick up far enough for that hard cover to go on. And then I'm going to take I got the wrong one. These things are different. One side has a long tail and it goes around that metal bracket that goes on the outside of the seat. So I'm going to center this thing up. Fill the foam underneath, fill the frame underneath. Make sure you're centered. Lay it on there. And the next thing I got to do is put some listing wire around this outside part. There's also a part in here that needs listing wire put on it. And that's where I'm at now. So I saved some of the listing wire from the other ones for putting in these bottom pieces and some of the other parts. So these are the wires that came out of the other seats. They're kind of thick wires. They're about the coat hanger size actually. So basically you just find the one that fits in that spot. And that's too short. That looks like the right one. Slide it through the pocket. In that case, we're going to even it up. And that leaves about 3/4 of an inch on each side with no wire. That's going to be fine. And the same way I did before, we're going to use electrical wire around this. There's also another pocket here that needs one in it. If you don't have these wires, you can use coat hangers. So I got that in there. Now I'm going to put I'm going to use the number 12 gauge electrical wire around this one. And they sewed it up on the end, so you're going to have to cut it in order to open it up where you can put a wire in it. But it's made for a wire to be put in. Well, you don't have to cut it actually, you can start it from this side. If you got something besides electrical wire, that's fine too. It's just something I happen to have around. And no, it's not cheap. Nothing's cheap though. There's nothing cheap about doing these car seats at all. And that's doing it yourself. It's still not cheap. Okay, so this doesn't go all the way around. It only goes to the edge here. So I'm not going to use electrical wire for that. I will use a coat hanger or one of these. Since I've got it, I'm going to use the one that's already made for it. It doesn't round the corner at all like some of them would. Like the ones on the back seat. We've got that on all 4 sides, so now it's going to be a matter of making sure you're lined up with the frame and then folding over the edges. may have to get it on the floor so you can put some weight on it. So basically I'm going to try to attach it on the bottom first. Some things like this would be better with a second set of hands. Alright, so I'm going to start at the top, center, and attach this to it. Well, one thing I need to make sure of is it's centered. And it is not. So I get to remove that one. So you want to make sure you're in the center of the equal amount hanging off of each side. And now I am. Okay, so I attached the top and the bottom. You can't attach the sides yet. You gotta put the back on at the same time. I'm gonna put the buttons in right now, and I'm also gonna pull out this piece that's in the middle. It's this right here. And you pull on it to give it a more pillowy looking design, so it's gonna pull that down in the middle. But when I do my buttons, I basically try to eyeball the middle, both directions, and that's what I do. You can measure if you want. If you're not good at judging distances, you should measure. Then you flip it over. And then you got to find the spot where they're at. And you got to be careful or you'll poke yourself. And then you take one of these metal washers that comes with it, stick it over it. And then you take a pair of needle nose pliers and bend the tabs. And it matters how hard you push on this. It's how much your buttons are going to stick through. You want to do them evenly. Front seat and back seat. And you can readjust them if you don't like the way they look. What I try to do is something about like this, so it pulls it in and it looks like a cushion. If you pull it too far, it puts like a wrinkle in it. That's what I do. So there's the two of them. Sometimes you can put like a book or something under it and it'll give you more pressure to push on. Problem with this is it's up under the edge, so it is really sucks really bad to get to. Alright, so I got the 4 cushions pulled in. They look pretty decent. So I got the 4 buttons pulled in. Now I'm gonna make a hole in the middle so I can pull this middle piece in. So for that to be done, I gotta find the middle. And it is right here. I gotta cut the burlap. And kind of dig a hole through the foam. So I'm going to show what I did. I made a hole in that and I pulled this tab out. Now I'm going to take one of these cardboard blocks. Part of the original seat stuff. I'm going to lay it here. I'm going to roll it and pull this through. Pull it through that hole in the middle and hog ring it. Okay, so I pulled it in. I put a hog ring there to keep it from pulling back through the cardboard, and that's what it looks like. And you can adjust the amount these things go in. If you feel like you got too much, you go in there and shorten up the distance that you got there. Overall, I think this thing's gonna look pretty good. It's looking like it's filling out pretty good. So something else you're gonna have to do before you start, they put holes in the back of these for the buttons. You're gonna have to put the buttons in these. So what I'm gonna do is make sure I've got it flat. I'm going to poke it out from the inside. And then I'll go back through the other side. And basically you just want to have a little bit of a indentation there. So then I'll put the metal ring on there and bend this over. This is a little different. You really don't have that much hinge to pull in. So just do it until you have a little bit of indentation there, so it looks kind of like the rest of the stuff. And do the same thing, make sure it's flat and poke it through. Put your metal ring on the back. Try to make it look about the same as the other side. And it does. And then there's going to be this hole here. So there is a left and right side. One of it goes where the latch goes. The latch for the seat. So you have to have a listing wire in this bottom here. I think one of the short ones probably will do the job for that, but we'll see. Yeah, I think it's a shorter one than what I got there. I'm probably just going to use a coat hanger. Because all of them that I have are, no, I found one perfect. So it slides in there, and this will buckle down to the same place the other one did. I said the biggest thing being, it needs to be centered up with the front seam, and this latch has to be centered up over the hole. Alright, so I attach that first, so then I know how much I can pull. And pretty much lines up perfectly at the bottom when you do that. Still a difficult thing to do at the bottom because there's so much tension on it. So that worked out well. I attached it on the top and bottom. Now one of the things I've got to do is I took the bolts out when I disassembled it, and it's a waste of time to take the bolts out, but I got to put the bolts back in. Those brackets are welded. So next on this, I have to connect the sides, and I have to wrap around the edges and everything that you can see that's not lined up good. First thing I'm going to do is grab it right in the middle and connect it. That way I've still got my corners open so I can tuck everything. Missed. Alright, so I'm going to take this one out so I don't poke anything. So I'll do the same on the other side. And there's what the back looks like. I think the back is the best looking part of this seat, the way they put this stainless or brushed aluminum, whatever it is. Of course, it won't be tan, it'll be black. It comes with new upholstery to cover this. And there's clips that hold this on at the top. And there's a screw on the bottom on each side. One there, and one there. And there's some hardware that goes on there to bolt that to. This being the hardware. It's the wrong one, but when you bolt it on, once you put it on, it puts a hole for this to mount to on the back. But I'm happy with it. I think it's gonna look great. So essentially, I just peeled this foam off. Looks like it's glued here. It's not glued all over. And it's glued on the inside edge where it wraps around. And feels like contact cement is what they used. This is fiberglass. So I have a feeling this is gonna be a joy to put back together to get it to hold good. Okay, so this is the second seat back that I'm doing. First one, I didn't have a clue what to do with it, so I had to stop and do some research on YouTube. So I figured out how to do it now. It's not that hard, but you need to have a heat gun and some contact cement. Anyway, what I did is take some pictures of both sides of this so you can see how it was glued down before and try to mimic that. I also leave the cloth on the top of it, so whenever there's some kind of I don't know, batting on the back side of this, I just leave that on there. So also one thing I did is I set this out here in the sun. We got kind of a warm day. We got 80 degrees today. It's not a requirement to do this because you're going to use the heat gun anyway. But everything I saw said that it was a good idea to do it. So on the first one I did not, because I did it at nighttime. But on this one it's nice and warm today, so I'm going to do it. So I'm going to remove the old one. I've got it kind of sitting here warming up a little bit too. So this is the contact cement I got. I got it from Lowe's, Weldwood, and I got some of these cheap throwaway brushes. You basically put this stuff on there and let it dry. And I'm putting it kind of back in the same places I'll probably go a little further than the factory did because I don't want to take any chances on it not holding. But if you can see where they did it before from the factory, I did that. I pretty much painted the whole outside of this this piece here. When I did the other one, it made it really easy, so I don't see any reason not to do it. I mean, another thing, I had no problems whatsoever with moving this around either while I was working with it. I saw one video, a guy said, don't use contact cement because you won't be able to move it around. That's not true. I had no problem moving it around. It doesn't stick instantly like super glue where you can't move it. Not this kind anyway. But it does hold good. It does hold well, so you don't have to worry about it holds while you're using it. So I had to heat with the heat gun to get it to stretch on there how I wanted. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It'd be nice to have more than one person, but I didn't have that. So then you put the cap back on. And put your brush in a bag so it don't dry up instantly. The good thing is the kit they give you is they give you way more than you need. So the corners are the hardest part of this. So I definitely put some on the back side of the corners. You're going to try to get this thing, you're going to be cutting away a lot of this material. You want to try to get it laid up where you want it. You can always add some more to this wherever you need to also. That's kind of what I did. Okay, I kind of started this off the wrong way. First thing I should have done was put this chrome on. That would have given me something to pull against. So that's what I'm gonna do. So you basically put it in place. You're gonna have to cut some holes and drill some holes and plug some holes. But that way it gives you something to pull away from, and it's a whole lot easier to do this. I'm gonna cut these corners, cut it back to the corners here, getting rid of the excess. I use a scratch awl to poke holes in the vinyl. I'm going to make sure it's pushed all the way up to that. And these pieces in here slide. Get your screw to. So you gotta kind of line them up, lay it on here, flip it over like this and line up the little slides in there. If you slide them all the way over to the little stop, it works very well. And there's two screws that are slightly larger that hold this on. If you just kind of start a couple threads in, you can still leave it loose enough to, like I said, that once you tighten it up, it gives you something to pull against. Kind of pull that out straight. Find the holes. So that can get you started there. One side of this has these little tabs. You have to cut holes with a razor knife to get it to sit down in there. Not 100% sure why they did it on one side, not the other. So you got these tabs here. I cut some holes there. Sliding these down in the holes I cut. Actually, got to do this first. Put it on here. And then slide it down in the holes I cut. Alright, so that definitely puts us in a better position to stretch it. So now it's a matter of stretching it over the corners. I've got way too much material here, so I'm going to trim some off. That's going to make it a little easier too. Definitely got to be careful when you're trimming. You can't add back to it. So I'm going to make sure I have plenty of contact cement on the corner areas. I'm going to reapply it because I had to leave for a few minutes. Put it on there good on inside edges. I think I've got enough heat on this from the sunlight out here that I don't need to heat it with the heat gun. I'm going to heat it up anyway. You gotta be careful with the heat gun, getting too close. But it also helps to dry the glue. You gotta kind of get rid of some of this bunched up junk here too. You gotta be careful with the heat gun, not to blister it. So I make it hot, but I don't make it like boiling hot. One thing about it, it sticks very well when it's dry. And the heat gun definitely helps with that. Yeah, definitely the heat gun is the ticket. So even though it's warm out here, it's not warm enough. When I use the heat gun on this, I pull all the wrinkles out of it. Just like that. You can see it looks pretty good. And now I'm going to do the same thing on this corner. And get rid of some of the excess with the scissors. Because you can have too much crap there and it's hard to pull it over. Definitely works better when it's heated. Tremendously better. And now I just got to work my way down to the ends, but like I said, that's good for me. You could probably work it as much as you want and try to make it extremely perfect, but it's good for what I'm doing. I'll take the heat gun and use it to dry the glue and heat the vinyl at the same time. So then you just take it and fold it over. Work your way down through here and kind of stretch it out while you're. You can keep working the corner. You can split it. It makes it a little easier. So when you pull it, you can pull it down and And then you can pull it down on the other spot. And you can keep applying contact cement until you get rid of all that. So now that side's complete. Then you take the bottom and fold it up over there. The contact cement works so well. Now you can see this is good all the way around. This corner here I gotta work on some more because I haven't finished this side. Again, probably one of the biggest problems is too much bulky material here. You can split it. It helps a lot. Plenty of glue on the bottom here and on the overlapping edge. Kind of keep the brush covered up while you're not using it, and it keeps it from drying out. And then I'll take the heat gun and kind of dry the glue and heat it up at the same time. I don't have enough glue on the bottom here. We'll glue the edge real well. And then I've got a spot over here that's kind of lifting. It just needs to be glued better. Unbunched. The one I did the other day, it's held really well. Okay, so after getting all the vinyl put on here, we have to put on this piece of windlass trim, and it's got to be stapled on here like the original was. So this stuff comes with the kit, and it when you order it, I ordered some from Impala, and it's called windlass, and I don't know if that's the proper name for it or not, but it goes around this edge just like there was from the factory. So when they give it to you, it's got extra foam sticking out. I just chopped that off. And about 1/4 inch staples for the stapler. Where's that? Right here it is. Basically make sure you got enough hanging over. They give you plenty of extra. And you can kind of start in the middle if you want. That's what I'm going to do. And these staples are not as secure as the factory ones, I don't think, so I put them about every inch. So you see how it looks, it runs down the edge. It's kind of a gap filler is what it is. All right, so this piece can go on next. It goes to the inside here. I'll put some hog rings and hog ring this piece of cloth in there a little better. So this goes to the inside here. So just like that, that's on there. Then these pieces go on there. There those are. This goes on here like this. And slides down. And if you look, there's no gaps here. That's kind of what this stuff is. It kind of hides the gaps. Along with making sure you got enough foam in it. So there's going to be a hole that you got to poke in it right here with the awl. And it lines up with the bracket underneath here. And you kind of got to look on the back there. There's a slotted hole in that bracket I put on. And that's what holds it down on this side. And there's a similar one over here on this side. We got to figure out where it's at on the frame. There's a bracket on there that mounted that this goes on. You gotta make sure everything's right before you do that. Alright, I got that. So now the last thing I've got to do, and I probably jumped the gun a little bit when I put this on, but I gotta put in the button. So in order to put the button in, it has to have a hole. It has to be cut out. So this has to be cut through on the inner layer. So basically I have to take this out. I have to do it on both sides. Alright, so there's a metal bracket that goes here on top of this layer of fabric. It has 4 holes, but these had two screws in it. And of course I lost one of the screws down in the hole. So I'll move on to the next one. These screws are kind of in the corners. So I got that on there. I should have done that before I put the back on. Alright, there we go. That's it for this. Now I have both backs complete. That's both backs complete. I'm not gonna lie, they were a pretty big pain. Maybe the worst of all the seats I've done yet. But still doable. Now what I've got left to do is the frame, the bottom. Okay, so now we're at the part where we do the base of the front seat. And first thing we're gonna do is put burlap on it. Well, actually the first thing I'm gonna do is put some pieces of blanket in there where they originally would have had some felt. I'm gonna put something in there to keep it so when you push this, the springs don't touch each other and make noise. So all you gotta do is have some blanket, some of this felt that I bought from Hobby Lobby. Basically just put it in between the springs and hog ring it down. And the only purpose of that is prevent the noise of the springs touching each other when you sit down on them. Do the same on the other side. Hold trip. Just gonna double it up. Slide it right in there. Anywhere that any springs are like folded, so that when they bend they can hit each other, that's where you want to put that. And you pay attention to where they're at when you take them apart. Problem is the original fabric becomes dry rotted, so it's not usable. It can be kind of difficult to do this because you're having to go between the springs. Next, I'm going to put a layer of burlap over the seat. Now that I put the anti-noise makers in there, probably going to double the burlap up since this is the last thing I got to do and I've got extra. It's not going to hurt anything, it'll actually help it. The whole purpose of it is to stay there and keep from digging into the foam, keep the springs from digging into the foam. Next, I'm going to put the felt blanket on there. Okay, so I've covered it in burlap and then in felt. I actually double layered it on this one. The only reason I did it is because I had extra. This is the last seat that I gotta redo of my own. So now I'm gonna lay this up here. I'm gonna lay it to where it overlaps the edge, maybe an inch. And the front's just gonna be, it is what it is. I'm not gonna cut it off. But I am gonna cut this side off. So I'm going to cut a couple notches just to, so this will sit back on the, so it'll sit all the way back. This is where the middle armrest bolts on. And it kind of sticks out a little bit, so. So now it sits all the way back. I'm also going to cut this corner out right here, because this is where the latches sit at. I'm going to cut out this corner because this is where the pivot point is. So I'm leaving a little overhang everywhere I cut it out. And that's the way it is. But just like the other seats that I've done, I'll be running an electrical wire around the, well, actually I can run straight wires on here. It doesn't go around the corners. So I'll probably use coat hangers, and I gotta put one on the sides all the way around. And then also on this part. So there's gonna be two on this. This is gonna stretch all the way over. I just take coat hangers and straighten them out. Cut the ends off that are too twisted to use. Straighten them out good as I can. And then I'll slide it down the channel. There's a little sewn into it piece there that you slide a hanger in, or whatever you use. Listing wire is what I think the real people, professionals use, but I don't have that. So I'm going to use coat hangers. So I had to cut a little slit in it so I can slide the hanger in. They just sew it in there, but the ends have to be open, or at least one end does. So I'll do the same thing from the other side, because this one only reached a little over halfway. So they're overlapping now. So I got it all the way across there now. I'm gonna do another one here. So we got a pocket here on the front. I'll put another one in from the other side, and then I'll have to put one on each one of these short ones. Okay, so I've got wires ran through every pocket that they should be ran through. I just gotta make sure you don't want to have anything sticking out the end. So I'm going to start trying to, actually I'm going to connect it down back here at the back with this first wire. You gotta make sure you center it up. This can be pretty difficult because you're having to compress the foam. It kind of lines itself up because you got these holes for this armrest to go in. So the first thing you want to do is start in the middle. And connect it down to some springs around the listing wire that you put in there. And it can be pretty difficult to get to. You have to keep on sometimes try again. You just get a couple, 2 or 3 in the back and the middle. So you just flip it over, and then you find the middle. Make sure you're in the middle. And stretch this down and connect it. You got the places here to connect it to. This is the middle. So pretty much centered up on its own, but it's important that it is centered. So you work your way from the center out on both sides. And I put a hog ring everywhere there's a hole. Okay, so I attached it on all four sides. This looks good. Now I gotta attach the back of the carpet on there. So again, I'm gonna pick it right in the middle and stretch it forward and pull it as tight as I can and attach it to the springs. This seat's different than the ones I've done in the past, so kind of the similar techniques there. So I'm just having to figure some of it out as I go. The condition of the other seat was so bad, a lot of the information was kind of lost there. So this part's the same as my brother's Caprice. You just attach the carpet to it. There's holes there. It's meant for the hog rings. This stuff here in the corner is meant to wrap around the hinges and everything, so you gotta be kind of careful what I attach and when. This is kind of tricky stuff. I want to make sure I get it right. I think I'm basically going to have to trim the carpet. I don't think it's cut exactly perfect. Which is not surprising because there's a lot of stuff not exactly perfect. Okay, so these things go on here. Somewhere in this area. I was looking at my other car. And also the seat bumpers go right here. But figuring out where they go is kind of tricky. You need to figure out where the holes are. I'm placing the buttons now. And I started off with this button and put it dead center. And then you just kind of center them up and make them look the best you can. You can measure if you want. You just take them and poke them down in there. And just like on all the rest of them, you got to flip it over and push them from the back side. It's a little bit aggravating to do, but you kind of get the feel of it after you do it a few times. What I've had to do on all of them is put them on the table, put a book under them. So what I've done is shoved a book under there. Put a book directly under the button. And it gives me something to push against. And then I push down. You gotta be careful too, because you'll poke yourself. And sometimes they end up in hard places to get to. And that's what this one is. That's why I got the long needle nose pliers for those. So on the center of the 4 cushions, there's a piece like this sticking down from the inside, and you have to cut a hole through the foam and basically pull on this a little bit and hog ring it to the spring, and it gives it a more cushion-like look. It's only like that on the front seat. For whatever reason, they didn't put it on the back seat, because I actually went back and looked at it. So this is what it looks like with all the buttons in. And the piece pulled down in the middle, it pulls down from there. And just gives it a little more contour, I guess, cushion-like. And you can adjust these buttons and try to get them to where they look more or less pulled in. They're a little it's a little difficult. I'm probably gonna adjust these two and make them put less tension on them so they don't look quite so sunk in around them. Basically just a matter of rebending the tabs a little bit less on the back. Okay, so this is what the seat looks like complete. It's kind of a dark day, so I don't have a lot of light in here, but I did try to loosen these buttons up some, but there's really not enough room. I guess the foam is thick in those areas, but anyway, I took a heat gun and tried to smooth out any areas that were not smooth. I'm still waiting on our retainer for this pin right here. The other side, I broke one of my retainers when I took it apart. Retaining rings. I found some on Amazon. Hopefully that'll work. And anyway, everything functions like it should. I'm probably gonna do another video on the electric part of this. I did not cut the hole out for the electric switch. I want to test out my electrical parts first. If they don't work, I'm just going to use my manual ones from my seat that's in my car right now. But anyway, I hope this helps somebody. Hope at least gives you an overview. I didn't show the rebuilding of this piece. I showed it on the rear seat. I stuffed some more foam in this because it was kind of collapsed on the top. But now it looks mostly better. I'm happy with it. Everything's good. So this took a little while to do this. Probably more than a weekend is what it took me, if you worked on it continuously. Some people may be faster than others, but it was a lot involved in it. Especially, there was a good bit involved in these back pieces. Once I figured out how to do them, it wasn't so bad, the corners. So hopefully this helps people on that, so they don't have the same problems I did at first, which was not using a heat gun and not using contact cement. Contact cement worked very well on there. Remember, use contact cement on both sides, all the hard surfaces and all the soft. And then use the heat gun and stretch it on there. But it came out good.